Mom told our entire church I was donating my apartment to orphans. I never agreed. She used God as a weapon to take everything I own. I was raised in a household where faith wasn't just practiced, it was breathed. Church every Sunday, prayers before meals, Bible verses framed on every wall. My mother was always devout, but in the last 5 years, her involvement intensified into something I barely recognized. She joined the church's charity committee, started volunteering at a local orphanage, and became one of the most active members of a fund that helps orphanage graduates transition to adult life. I respected her dedication. I admired her compassion. What I didn't expect was becoming her next donation target. My path diverged from my mother's spiritual intensity early on. Despite the religious upbringing, I took a practical route. I worked hard through school, landed a stable job in IT, and saved aggressively. At 26, I bought my own apartment. $139,000, small but mine. 800 square feet of independence. 2 years of mortgage payments that felt like building something real. I'm not anti-religious. I still attend church occasionally, still believe in helping others. I donate to charities, modest amounts, within my means. I volunteer sometimes, soup kitchen at Thanksgiving, toy drives at Christmas. By any reasonable measure, I'm a good person. But reasonable measures aren't what my mother uses anymore. Over the past 5 years, my mother has transformed into someone I struggle to recognize. Possessions are chains, she says now. God blesses those who give everything. The more you sacrifice, the more you receive spiritually. She's given away significant portions of her own money, to the point where I genuinely worry about her retirement. My father, 60 and quietly frustrated, has become passive, letting her do whatever she wants. She's found her identity in being the most generous person in the church. And apparently, she needs me to validate that identity. The charity fund she works with helps young adults aging out of the orphanage system. At 18, they leave institutional care with nothing. No family, no savings, no safety net. The fund provides transitional housing, job training, basic necessities. It's genuinely good work. I've donated before, a few $100s here and there when I had extra. But the fund has expanded its vision. They want to acquire apartments to house graduates permanently. They need properties. And my mother knows someone with a property. They ask. Sunday dinner at my parents' house. The meal was pleasant enough. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, the same recipes from my childhood. After we finished, my mother brought out a folder. Professional looking, organized, purposeful. I want to talk to you about something important, she said, settling into her chair with the folder open. Something that could change lives. She presented information about the orphanage fund, the housing initiative, the young people who desperately needed help. Stories of kids who aged out at 18 and ended up homeless within months. Statistics about the lack of support systems. Photos of young faces, 17, 18, 19 years old, trying to navigate adult life alone. I listened, expecting an ask for a donation. Maybe a larger one than usual, given the presentation. Then my mother said, I've been praying about this for weeks. I believe God is calling you to do something significant. Transfer your apartment to the fund. Give these children a real home. I thought I'd misheard. Transfer my apartment? She nodded serenely. Yes. The fund needs properties. You have one. These children have nothing. It's simple mathematics of compassion. You're young, healthy, you can earn more, buy another place eventually. But for them, this could be the difference between homelessness and hope. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but said nothing. This was my mother's domain. I was on my own. Mom, that's my home. My security. Everything I've worked for. She leaned forward, and I saw the light in her eyes, the conviction that makes compromise impossible. God is watching how you handle your blessings. Do you hoard them? Or do you share them? It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. You have property while children sleep in shelters. How do you justify that to your Creator? The familiar guilt of my religious upbringing rose immediately, the feeling that wanting anything for yourself is sinful, that comfort is greed, that ownership is moral failure. I felt it like muscle memory, automatic and overwhelming. I appreciate the work the fund does, I said carefully. I've donated before and I'll donate again. But transferring my entire apartment, that's not a small thing. That's my home. My future. Your future is in God's hands, not in real estate, my mother said firmly. Do you trust Him or don't you? If you truly believed, you would give freely, knowing He will provide. Your hesitation reveals your faith is weak. My faith isn't measured by whether I give you my apartment. The words came out sharper than I intended. My mother's expression shifted, hurt, then determination. I'll pray for you, she said quietly. I'll pray that God softens your heart. I left that dinner feeling like I'd failed some test I didn't know I was taking. The pressure campaign. The next Sunday at church, I discovered what my mother meant by praying for me. People I barely knew approached me after service. Your mother told us about the opportunity to help orphans, said Mrs. Henderson, one of the older congregation members. What a blessing that you're considering it. We're praying for your decision, added another woman whose name I couldn't remember. God rewards generous hearts, said Mr. Patterson, shaking my hand with uncomfortable intensity. She told the entire congregation that I was considering transferring my apartment. I never said I was considering anything. I'd said no. But my mother had reframed my refusal as contemplation, manufacturing social pressure by announcing a decision I never made. I felt trapped, surrounded by well-meaning people who thought I was on the verge of doing something noble, when really I was just trying to keep my home. Every smile felt like an expectation. Every "we're praying for you" felt like a deadline. After service, the priest approached me. Father Michael was in his 50s, kind-faced, genuinely good at his job. Your mother speaks highly of your generous spirit, he said warmly. I realized I'd been positioned as already agreeing. The narrative was set. I was the generous young man about to give his apartment to orphans, not the hesitant son who'd said no to an unreasonable request. I decided to be honest. Father, I need to clarify something. I haven't agreed to anything. My mother asked me to transfer my apartment to the charity fund. That's not a small thing. That's my entire home. Father Michael's expression shifted, discomfort crossing his features. That is a significant request. Charity should come from the heart, not from pressure. What does your heart say? My heart says it's my apartment that I worked for, and giving it away would leave me with nothing. He was quiet for a moment. Then that's your answer. Faith doesn't require poverty. It requires love. Those aren't the same thing. It was the first thing anyone had said that made sense. The investigation. That week, I started researching the fund itself. If I was going to be pressured about this, I wanted to understand what I was actually being asked to give to. The fund was legitimate, registered charity, real programs, actual results. Their website showed success stories. Young adults who'd gone through their programs and were now employed, stable, thriving. The work was real and valuable. But as I dug deeper, I discovered something that made my mother's urgency feel manufactured. The fund had reserves. Significant reserves. They had investments generating steady income. They owned multiple properties already. 6 apartment buildings that had been donated over the years, housing dozens of young adults. They weren't desperate. They weren't on the verge of collapse. They were expanding. My mother had framed it as, children will be homeless without your apartment. The reality, children were being helped with or without me. My apartment would be nice to have, would expand their capacity, would help more people. But it wasn't the difference between the charity surviving or failing. It was just more. I looked into who ran the fund. The board members included several wealthy church members. People with family names on local buildings. People who owned multiple properties, had investment portfolios, drove luxury cars to Sunday service. And every single one of them had donated money to the fund, but not their own homes. They'd given cash, which was tax-deductible and controlled. Amounts that were generous but didn't impact their lifestyles. None of them had transferred personal property. The fund strategy seemed clear: acquire donations of property from people who could be guilt into it, while major donors gave in ways that preserved their own assets and provided tax benefits. I would be giving up my entire net worth, the only valuable thing I owned, while wealthy board members wrote checks from interest income and got thanked at charity dinners. She told the congregation I was considering donating my apartment. I never said that. She manufactured public pressure by announcing a decision I never made. That's not encouraging generosity. That's trapping someone with social expectations they never agreed to. That's using the community as leverage, making it socially costly to say no. Every person who smiled at me, every "we're praying for you," every assumption that I was doing this noble thing, all of it was pressure I never consented to. She'd weaponized kindness. The fund has reserves. Properties. Investments. They're not desperate. But Mother made it sound like orphans would freeze in the streets without my apartment. She weaponized children's suffering to guilt me into giving away everything I own. The reality, my apartment would be nice for them, would expand their capacity by a few more beds. The lie: it was necessary for survival. She created false urgency to override my rational objections. Because if it's not urgent, if they're not desperate, then my hesitation becomes reasonable instead of selfish. The confrontation. I requested a meeting with my mother. Not at her house, not at mine, at a coffee shop, neutral territory. She arrived looking pleased, probably thinking I'd reconsidered. "I've done research on the fund," I said once we'd sat down. "They have reserves. They have properties. Multiple buildings already donated. They're not in crisis. You made it sound like orphans would be homeless without my apartment. That's not true." My mother's expression hardened. "Every property helps. Every contribution matters. Why are you looking for reasons not to give?" "I'm looking for truth. You told the church I was considering donating when I said no. You told me children would suffer without my help when the fund is financially stable and expanding. You're manipulating me and the community to pressure me into giving away everything I have." "The devil speaks through logic," she said sharply. "He convinces us our reasons are good when really they're just selfishness dressed up as wisdom. You're being tested. Will you pass God's test or fail it?" Board members give cash donations, tax-deductible, controlled, from their excess. None of them transferred personal property. None gave their homes. But I was supposed to give my only asset while wealthy donors write checks from interest income? That's not equal sacrifice. That's targeting the vulnerable while the comfortable stay comfortable. That's a two-tier system where the wealthy get praised for giving what they won't miss while people like me are expected to give everything. The math doesn't work. The fairness doesn't exist. God doesn't test people by having their mothers deceive church congregations, I said, my voice steady despite the anger building in my chest. God doesn't require me to be homeless to prove my faith. And if He does, then I'll fail that test. Because I don't believe a loving God wants me to have nothing so a charity can have slightly more than it already has. You're choosing money over children. I'm choosing to keep my home. The home I worked for. The home that represents 2 years of saving and sacrifice. That's not greed. That's basic self-preservation. My mother stood up. "I'm disappointed in you. I thought I raised you better than this." "You raised me to think for myself," I said. "You just don't like what I'm thinking." She left without another word. Father's admission. That evening, I called my father. We met for breakfast the next morning, just us, which almost never happened anymore. "Dad, do you think I should give away my apartment?" He looked at his coffee for a long time. Looked at me. Looked back at his coffee. "Your mother's heart is in the right place. She wants to help children." "That's not what I asked. Do you think I should give away my only asset?" The silence stretched. I could see him weighing his words, decades of marriage teaching him when to speak and when to stay silent. Finally, "No, I don't. But I stopped arguing with your mother about charity years ago. She's committed." It wasn't support exactly, but it was honesty. And it told me that even my father, who'd been married to her for 35 years, thought she'd gone too far. Father admitted he doesn't think I should give away my apartment but stopped arguing with mother about charity years ago. That's not peace. That's surrender. He let her extremism grow unchecked until she was demanding her son's home for her causes. His silence enabled this. Every time he didn't push back, every time he let another unreasonable request slide, he taught her that there were no limits. My resistance had to end what his passivity had allowed to grow. "How much has she given away?" I asked. "More than I'm comfortable with. Our retirement savings are less than they should be. But she says God will provide." "Do you believe that?" He smiled sadly. "I believe in planning for the future. But your mother has enough faith for both of us, apparently." Setting boundaries. I requested a meeting with Father Michael and the Charity Fund's director. Both agreed to meet with me that Thursday evening in the church office. I explained the situation clearly. My mother's pressure, the misleading claims about the fund's needs, the public announcement I never agreed to, the comparison to wealthy board members who gave cash while I was expected to give property. Both men looked genuinely uncomfortable. The fund director, a man in his 40s named Mr. Roberts, spoke first. "We would welcome any donation, of course. But we've never asked anyone to give their primary residence. That's extreme. Our donors typically give what they can afford to give, not their entire net worth. We have wealthy supporters who give generously from their assets, and we have modest supporters who give what they can. Both are equally valued." Father Michael added, "Coerced charity isn't charity. It's extraction. I'll speak with your mother about appropriate boundaries. The priest said, coerced charity isn't charity, it's extraction. Finally, someone with religious authority said what I felt. Giving from guilt isn't generous. Giving from manipulation isn't holy. Giving because your mother deceived a congregation isn't spiritual. It's just taking with extra steps. It's using religion as a tool to acquire assets. It's wrapping coercion in scripture so it looks holy instead of predatory. The relief I felt was overwhelming. Validation from religious authority that I wasn't being selfish, wasn't being sinful, wasn't failing some cosmic test. I was just being reasonable. The aftermath. When Father Michael spoke to my mother about boundaries and voluntary giving, she was furious. She called me that night, her voice tight with anger. You went behind my back. You humiliated me in front of Father Michael and the director. I was trying to help you grow spiritually and you made me look like a manipulator. You are manipulating, I said calmly. You told people I was donating when I wasn't. You said children would suffer when the fund is stable. You used guilt and religion to try to take my apartment. That's manipulation. I just told the truth about it. I wanted what was best for you. For your soul. You wanted what made you look good to the church. There's a difference. She hung up. My mother didn't speak to me for 3 months. No calls, no texts, no Sunday dinners. My father would call occasionally with updates, your mother is still processing, but mostly I was cut off. I won't lie, it hurt. Despite everything, despite the manipulation and pressure, she was still my mother. The silence felt like punishment for the crime of keeping what was mine. Update 1. The community response. During those 3 months of silence, something interesting happened at church. Father Michael had apparently spoken more broadly about the situation, not naming me specifically, but addressing the concept of pressuring people into donations. He gave a sermon about authentic charity versus performative giving, about how God values the widow's mite, the small donation given from genuine love, more than large donations given from social pressure or pride, about how the early Christians shared their possessions voluntarily, not through coercion. Several people approached me afterward to apologize. Mrs. Henderson, who'd congratulated me on my generosity, looked embarrassed. I didn't realize the full situation. Your mother made it sound like you were eager to help. I'm sorry for adding to the pressure. Others simply stopped mentioning it. The social pressure that had felt suffocating began to lift. People treated me normally again, not as the generous young man making a sacrifice, just as a regular member of the congregation. I learned that I wasn't the only one my mother had targeted. An elderly widower mentioned that she'd pressured him to donate his late wife's jewelry collection. A young couple said she'd suggested they sell their car and donate the proceeds. In each case, she'd framed it as a spiritual test, a chance to prove their faith through sacrifice. The pattern was clear. My mother had become so consumed by her charity work that she'd lost the ability to distinguish between encouraging generosity and demanding sacrifice. Update 2. Redefining faith. I started attending a different church. Not because I wanted to avoid my mother, she was already avoiding me, but because I needed space to figure out what I actually believed versus what I'd been taught to feel guilty about. The new church was smaller, less formal. The pastor was younger, more focused on community service than guilt. They ran a food bank, organized neighborhood cleanups, tutored kids after school. Practical help without the weight of eternal judgment. I volunteered at the food bank on Saturdays. Sorting donations, packing boxes, loading cars. Simple, direct help that didn't require me to destroy my own stability to prove my worth. One Saturday, a woman picking up food, probably in her 50s, tired-looking, thanked me for volunteering. I know it's not glamorous work, she said. But it matters. It does, I agreed. My church is always asking for money, she continued. Big donations, building funds, mission trips. But you know what I need? I need food. I need help with rent sometimes. I need someone to treat me like a person, not a mission project. This place does that. Her words stayed with me. My mother's charity work was real and valuable, but it had become about the grandness of the gesture, the dramatic sacrifices, the big donations, the public recognition of generosity. She'd lost sight of the simple, sustainable help that actually builds community. Mother said, the devil speaks through logic. That's how you know someone's argument can't survive examination. When questioning becomes demonic, when thinking becomes sinful, when examining claims becomes faithlessness, that's not religion. That's control wearing religious clothing. That's shutting down critical thinking by making it morally wrong to think critically. It's intellectual extortion. Agree with me or you're evil. There's no reasoning with that. There's only resisting it. Update 3. The reconciliation attempt. 4 months after our confrontation, my mother called. No preamble, no apology, just, "I'd like you to come to Sunday dinner." I almost said no. But my father had been quietly encouraging reconciliation, and I missed having a relationship with both my parents, even if it was complicated. Sunday dinner was awkward. My mother acted as if the apartment conversation had never happened. She talked about the orphanage, the fund's recent success placing a young woman in job training, the church's upcoming Christmas charity drive. Normal conversation, surface level pleasant. My father looked relieved that we were in the same room without arguing. Toward the end of the meal, my mother said, "I've been praying a lot. About charity, about boundaries, about what God actually requires of us." I waited. Father Michael reminded me that charity should be joyful, not coerced. That giving from guilt isn't the same as giving from love. She looked at her plate. I think I forgot that. I became so focused on doing more, giving more, proving more. I stopped thinking about whether I was asking too much. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was acknowledgement. "I'm not giving you my apartment," I said quietly. "That's not changing." "I know. I understand. I didn't before, but I do now." We ate in silence for a moment. "But I would like to keep supporting the fund," I continued, "in ways that make sense for me. My budget, my capacity." My mother nodded. "That would be appreciated." It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Update 4. A new normal. A year after the apartment demand, my relationship with my mother has settled into something different than it was before. We have dinner once a month. We talk on the phone occasionally. But there are boundaries now, clear lines she doesn't cross. She still works with the charity fund. Still volunteers at the orphanage. Still gives generously of her time and money. But she stopped pressuring others to match her level of commitment. Father Michael's intervention, combined with my resistance, seemed to establish a limit she hadn't encountered before. I donate to the fund quarterly now, $200 every 3 months. It's what I can afford without impacting my own financial stability. My mother thanks me each time, genuinely. No commentary about how it could be more, no suggestions about other assets I could give. Just thanks. I'm still at the smaller church. Still volunteering at the food bank. My faith, whatever it is now, is quieter than what I grew up with. Less about proving devotion through sacrifice, more about showing up consistently in small ways. My apartment is still mine. I paid off a significant chunk of the mortgage this year. Each payment feels like an affirmation: this is mine, I earned it, I get to keep it. My father seems more relaxed. With my mother's charity extremism dialed back, their marriage feels less strained. He even jokes occasionally, "At least she's only asking for my time now, not my retirement." She called me spiritually weak for not giving away my apartment. But I donate what I can afford. I volunteer my time. I help where I'm able. Spiritual strength isn't measured by whether you make yourself homeless. It's measured by how you treat people, including yourself. Self-destruction isn't faith. It's just destruction. It's not noble to destroy yourself for a cause. It's not holy to sacrifice your future for someone else's vision of your virtue. Sustainability matters. Self-preservation matters. You can't help anyone if you've helped yourself into destitution. Resolution. Last Sunday, I woke up in my apartment. Quiet Sunday morning. I wasn't going to church. I go sometimes, not always, which feels right for where I am spiritually. Coffee in hand, I stood by the window watching the city wake up. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother, "Praying for you today." Folded hands. No mention of donations. No guilt. No requests. Just a message. I texted back, "Thanks, Mom. Love you." It's not perfect. It'll never be what it was before she tried to take my apartment for God. There's a wariness now, a recognition that her love comes with the potential for strings attached to real estate. But we found something, a relationship with boundaries instead of a relationship built on extraction. I sipped my coffee. Sunlight streaming through the windows of my apartment. My space. My achievement. My future secured in 800 square feet of mortgage payments and careful saving. The blessings I have are the ones I built, not the ones someone promised for giving everything away. My mother wanted me to transfer my apartment to charity. Not a donation I could afford, my entire apartment. Everything I owned. For a fund that had reserves, properties, investments, and was staffed by wealthy donors who gave cash from their excess while expecting people like me to give our entire net worth. She used religion as a crowbar. God is watching. The devil speaks through logic. Your faith is weak. As if questioning whether to make yourself homeless is sinful. As if examining a charity's actual needs is demonic. As if wanting to keep the apartment you worked for is spiritual failure. I kept my apartment. I kept my boundaries. And I kept my faith, just not the version where God demands poverty as proof of devotion. I believe in helping others. I do help others, with money I can afford, time I can spare, energy I can give without destroying myself. That's sustainable generosity. That's real charity. What my mother wanted was sacrifice theater, a dramatic gesture that would make her look good in her community while I lost everything. That's not God's plan. That's her plan, wearing God's name. I said no. And I'd say no again. Because charity that requires your destruction isn't charity. It's consumption dressed up as compassion. And I refuse to be consumed. I still have my apartment. My mother's manipulation was exposed, boundaries were established, and my faith was redefined on my own terms. She texts occasionally, simple messages without the weight of cosmic judgment. We have something resembling a relationship now. It's careful, it's boundaried, but it exists. And every mortgage payment I make is a quiet affirmation. This is mine, I earned it, and keeping it doesn't make me any less worthy of love, divine or maternal.